Hi, it's Richard here from the OPAHub.com website with the second in our short series about the Mantis Solutions OPA DB connector. I must apologize straight away for the strange voice. Perils of changing time zone. I've ended up with a bad cold. Hopefully it's not contagious through YouTube. Let's start with the first of the four things I want to talk about today, which is the OPA DB connector dashboard when you log into the cloud platform to review your data sources. Simple but effective. On the left-hand side, I have operations by mappings, and on the right, operations by time. I can move those two sections around. What's cool about this is they're not static diagrams. I mean by that that if I use the mouse, for example, to select operations I'm not interested in, I can zap them out of the diagram. Similarly, on the left-hand side here, by time, I can choose a different time segment. Let's choose 1 day. I'm not using the mouse because I'm trying to do everything in one demo. And I can, of course, remove operations that are not interesting to me. It's the kind of thing I would have liked to have seen in the standard product, actually. The second thing that I want to show you is a neat feature in respect of data source mappings. So you may remember from last time that I have a MySQL database somewhere in the cloud. And in the mappings, I had one table. And what I want to look at is debug mode. One of the things that frustrates me about the standard product, great though it is that I can't get much detail out of the OPA Hub application as far as errors are concerned. So what I want to be able to do for a data source connection is be able to, well, look at the log and understand really what's gone on. So the OPA DB connector log is far better organized. As you can see, I have a bunch of icons to tell me whether it's a database transaction or an XML message. I can see the detail, in this case, of an SQL call. If I go to the next one up here, I can see the detail of an XML message, and I can see the standard output of the connector using the table and field tags that we know and love. It's easy to read, it's detailed, plus I have a search facility so I can look for stuff. It's much easier than just plowing through 1,000 rows of text. While I'm still here looking at the OPA DB dashboard and my data sources, the next thing I want to draw to your attention is the ability to create essentially bind variables. You'll notice here that when I set up the data source, I had a URL binding, and it was to use row ID, which is in fact, not surprisingly, the unique identifier in my little database here. And you'll have to believe me in a moment, I'm going to use row ID as a URL argument, so question mark row ID equals, and I'm going to use that because here in OPM, I've mapped it so that I will load it at start. So switching across to my browser, you'll have to take my word for this because I'm not going to show you the complete URL, but I've actually loaded a session using row ID equals 4. Just to remind you, that is row ID equals 4 is Richard. And I then can edit the data, submit the data change, and of course, when I go back to my database, it won't surprise you to see that that's been updated too. So simple stuff, but important to mention. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is how easy it is to set up links and essentially relationships in your model. So since we were last here, I've created a second table called OPADB child, which only has 3 columns. It has its own row ID, it has a parent row ID, and an asset name. So the parent row ID, you've guessed it, is mapping back to a particular customer here. So this is row ID number 4. So I have 2 assets in this table for that particular customer, specifically Richard's house and Richard's car. Now that I've set that up, what do I need to do? Well, in my OPA DB connector, I need to go and look at my data source. And my table mappings. And basically, I've added a second table mapping. I've specified the parent table. I have not specified a link name, which basically means that it will use the table source and the parent table to create an object that can be mapped in Oracle Policy Modeler. I've mapped my three fields exactly as I did before. I've specified that one of them is a foreign key. Not exactly rocket science, really easy to do. I then redeployed all of that, and in my Oracle Policy Modeler, as you would expect, here I have added a second entity, which is a child, and I've been able to map it to the OPADB child, and in addition I've been able to map the relationship. You'll see the relationship is coming through this link, OPADB example to OPADB child, which is simply the name assigned by the Mantis Solutions OPADB connector. And then I have proceeded to add the various fields to the entity. I'm going to go back and reload once again another session. So I've gone back to web determinations and I have reloaded the same session, that is to say with Richard the row ID equals 4 to load the instance of the global entity. And I also added a second screen. This time the second screen has of course a entity container for the assets, and I've simply added the two fields asset and asset ID. When I return to the web determination, you can see I have the global entity data here, and when I click next, this won't come as any great surprise, but I have easily and successfully retrieved the data about the child entity. So setting up relationships of one-to-many or one-to-one, really very straightforward, very easy to do. And as you can see, I was able to do it in the space of about 2 minutes. So that just about wraps up the second in our series of videos about the Mantis Solutions OPADB connector. I'll be back in a few days, hopefully with a stronger voice, and we'll look at some more features of this solution. Thanks for watching. See you on the OPAHub.com website soon.